Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammy and Nathan Yeager.
Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. In today's episode, we're chatting all about creating a life by design, our basic human needs and how they impact now and our future, the impact of having a coach or mentor, and overcoming challenges when making plans for the future. Now let's get into it.
Welcome to the Date Forever podcast, everyone. Today we're welcoming Harry and Tristan from Purpose Advisory. Harry is a proud father and empower of 25 to 45-year-olds in life and finances. He is a life coach, financial advisor, and mentor at Purpose Advisory. He specializes in advising and educating and empowering clients to identify their goals and true life purpose so that they can live an incredible life that they dream while also growing and managing their wealth. Tristan is an advisor, coach, and mentor at Purpose Advisory. He specializes in coaching clients to uncover their personality, discover their purpose, increase their income, de-stress their cash flow, grow their investments, and design a life in line with their values that move them towards a more fulfilled life. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thanks.
Great to be here.
Hey, so you've joined us for a podcast about relationships. Can you give us a quick zap up of your own relationship status?
Go for it, Tristan.
Okay, so we've been married for 8 years now. My wife, Renee, and I got married in 2012. We had our little one 19 months ago. Noelle's calls herself 2. And we've traveled a little bit around Sydney. We've traveled around the world a fair bit. We've lived abroad for about 6 months, and we've just sort of relocated to be back in Sydney.
And awesome. What about you, Harry?
So my wife and I we started dating about 12 years ago or so. And we've been married for about 5 and a bit years. We have a 6-month-old. Yeah. And so we haven't traveled around too much. We've done a bit of it here and there. My wife's from Singapore. We've been there a whole bunch of times. And we've done a whole lot of travel elsewhere as well. But overall, we're very much based in Sydney and enjoy our base here as well.
Very
that's
cool.
Awesome. So the two of you, Harry and Tristan, you form a part of Purpose Advisory. So can you just give us a little rundown of what Purpose Advisory is and what you do there?
Yeah, sure. So both myself and Tristan were first financial advisors. We went into the financial advice industry, which is very much built off an old model. And we both found through our own personal experiences before we even met each other, that our clients are actually getting more value from coaching conversations we were having with them. Conversations which weren't just about strategy or product, those insurances or investments and that kind of stuff. And the main reason for that is that most people just kind of think about money as, well, I'm just going to keep working as hard as I can to make enough money and eventually I can stop working, which means that they're living their entire life to have enough money. And so we're both very much focused on how we're able to empower our clients to be able to use money to be able to live the life they love. And the most important part of that is to be able to identify what that life is. So when we engage with our clients and we're finding that the life coaching's always been more valuable, it's not so much discussing about, hey, let's talk about money. Let's first talk about what you actually want from your life, and then let's talk about how money can actually support you doing that.
And that's where the life coach part of your intro comes in, right?
Yeah, exactly. It would be like going to someone and saying, hey, what car should I buy? Just tell me what car to get. It's like, oh, well, what type of car do you want? Well, I want it to be super fast and I want it to be able to have 8 people in there with lots of storage space and fit into the smallest parking spots. And I want it to be electric as well. And it's like, all right, well, let's first have a look at why you actually want the car in the first place. What's that for? I just want to get from point A to point B and to be able to move my family around. Oh, okay. So maybe a sports car isn't quite right for you. But without having that conversation and going back to the why do you actually want this and what do you want to have from your life and what's actually driving you forward, it's very difficult to work out what car you should get at the end of it, or when we talk about finances, which particular type of wealth plan is going to be best for you.
Yeah.
So the life comes in when we're trying to empower the clients to be able to make their own decisions for what they want to be doing based on what their goals and their values and their aspirations are.
Yeah, cool. So one of the values that we held very dear at Fuel Collective is to love life. It's not about living like a YOLO, you might die tomorrow kind of life, but it's really about living a life that you love and by intention, so that it doesn't just happen to you, but you actually make choices that are in line with your own values and that you really deeply love it. But obviously that requires people to have an understanding of what it is that brings them joy, or what is it that they're striving for, and why. I know at Purpose Advisory, that's something that you obviously help people do. Can you tell us a little bit about the process that you walk your clients through?
Yeah, for sure. Just to contextualize it, I guess it almost sounds a little bit presumptive to ask, is that really what you want? Why do you want it? Like, some people might feel, oh, that's a bit invasive, isn't it? And especially from Harry and I and my background working with mostly 50 and 60-year-olds as financial advisors, that generation doesn't like those questions much. There are exceptions, but not many of them. But what we find with both ourselves and definitely people we work with is they're hungry for these conversations. And it doesn't take much to scratch through the surface. So, because there's a lot of fear, limiting beliefs, anxieties that we deal with when we start confronting our dreams. For some people, it's having tried stuff before and failed, including marriages, even in like late 20s, 30s. We have a few clients who've, are in a relationship now the second time around, and they're very mindful that like their hopes and dreams for marriage this time around are like way scaled back, and tapping back into that desire to have the picture perfect marriage they once wanted. Like, it's scary to really do that,
I think that's so true. As soon as you say it out loud and you put a name to it, or you put a project to it, or you put a deadline to it, it does all of a sudden become a whole lot more real. And it opens up that whole space of, fuck, what if I fail? Or what if I don't hit that? Or what if I don't get that? And it's so much harder to acknowledge that once you've said it out loud.
Yeah, I'm just thinking back to a client conversation I had about 2 weeks ago, who's been a long-standing client of mine. And I've always been encouraging him to bring his girlfriend into the fold at some stage. And it was only once his girlfriend became fiance, and then marriage was happening very soon and very quickly. It's like, oh, okay, let's bring her into this now. Exactly as you're saying. Once you put a date to it, once you put a title to it, people do start to take it a little bit more seriously.
Yeah.
But the overall message there is, when you're talking about whether, even if it's not about finances, but just about goals and what you're striving for from your relationship, the sooner you have the conversation, the better.
Yeah, and I think it's, going about that, live a life by design, live a life that you really love. When you've had relationships or people modeled around you where you go to school, you finish your tertiary education, then you go on to get a degree or go on and do a traineeship, and then, you work in that career until, whatever date, and then you retire, and somewhere along the lines you've bought a house, got married, had some babies, and continued on until you retire, and then hopefully maybe enjoy a few years of leisure. And that is, I guess, somewhat a default life. That's the path that we've seen laid out around you. And if you've not ever seen someone do something different than that, it's quite an unusual thing to think about. What are the options? What could I be doing differently?
I agree with you, Sammy, but one step further, I think there's definitely a lot of examples now, especially for 20-year-olds, if not 30-year-olds, of like the many ways you can go. If you're looking at ways to build wealth, which is a lot of what people come to us for, like, hey, I want to become financially free at 40, or I've been reading this, people like Mr. Money Mustache. Some of your listeners might have looked at him. If you haven't, it's worth finding out his story. It's pretty cool. They got financially free before 30. To a very kind of like frugal means, work really hard, that sort of approach. And then there's kind of like the mogul, let's build a huge business and sell it in 5 years and make a mozza. Yeah, look, we've actually mapped out a lot of the different personalities of wealth creation strategy, which is fun to talk through. But the fact is, I think that we're mindful of these different routes now. We're also keen and open to it. And I say we, it's kind of our age group, right? But what I sense in all the people we work with is there's both the desire and the aspiration, but then a real sense of like, I don't know if it's even possible, like A, for anyone really, other than the celebrities, the people that actually make it, /B, like, what about me? Like our personal insecurities come right up. And this is what I was insinuating before around having tried something and failed, whether it was a relationship or a business, or even just having had like strong dreams in our teens and then realizing that life's way more complex, or having like a campaign that we were an activist for and we went out to a protest rally to make the world better. And then like 5 years later, we look back and like, whoa, like I thought it was black and white. It's not. Like everything's a bit gray. And I've been really surprised by it as well. A lot of dejected people, still young in life, knowing that there's complexity, but A, not knowing which way to go, and B, not really like having the confidence to pursue it. A desire, but lacking that confidence, right? That's probably the key thing. I don't know, Harry, if you would say the same. Like confidence is one of the main things that people actually come to us for.
Yeah, and confidence can be twofold. It can either be they don't really have the conviction within themselves as what they really want, so why put in the effort or why go down that path, or they're not actually convinced for themselves that it can actually be done.
Yeah.
Whether or not it can actually be done by them or if it can actually be done at all. They're not convinced, they don't know. And so that can definitely hurt someone's confidence and make them feel like they have to dream small, because otherwise it's just a bit too scary.
Yeah. So I think there is the two major things here that we're talking about. There's the shooting for that big vision and actually having a clear vision of where you want to get to. But then it's actually reflecting as well where you are at the moment and going, can I get from where I am at the moment to that big vision? And I think quite often it can be one or both of those things that is the limiting belief. It's like either I can't get to here from where I am at the moment, or it's that the end goal is just not achievable by anybody.
Yeah, right. And the practical reality is we never achieve the picture that we saw in our mind. Even those people that have amazingly crystal clear pictures, that they'll always confess it's way better or bigger or different. But the beautiful part of what we've discovered as the most effective process, if you had to like turn it to a formula, what's the process or the technique that we find works for people? Hopefully this is something that anyone listening could actually apply in their life, is that creating a picture of the future is super powerful, and most people don't do it. Very rarely do we even use our imagination for our personal lives after we leave school, right? If we're at work in an environment where we're forced to use our imagination for brainstorming, we'll do it. But then only select few people use our imagination in their personal lives, and they're typically creatives. And the rest of us, like, just do our thing. Generalizing, but that's what I've noticed. And then when it comes to building a clear picture of the future, the few things people do would be maybe make a Pinterest board of the property they might be interested in. Some people have like a wish list of who they're looking for. Those sorts of things, which are a bit more tangible. But a whole life, what does our life look like? That is hard work. So we've kind of built a process to help people create that image in their mind, totally in their mind. And one of the things that we focused on at first was the details, like how does it look? What does the house look like? What is the relationship like? Who's in the family? We were thinking 10 years from now, like how old are the kids? Just have a guess. Like let's start with something. What are you doing for a living? We even talked through what their ideal day was. And I think me more than Harry got really excited about all these details we could help people to picture up, because they love doing it. They all got really excited. When you took them through this process for half an hour or 60 minutes, you saw their face like brighten up. But after doing it for a while, I realized it wasn't cutting through. It wasn't leading to significant change. And it only struck probably in the last 6 to 12 months for me that it's not about the details. The details are a vehicle to an emotional connection. Because what happens when people have that sort of image in their mind, and the reason their face was brightening up is because they felt something that was totally different to their daily experience. Like, especially when we did the section of the activity where you ask the question, what's your ideal day look like? Let's start with the very first thing. And I'll ask the question, okay, first thing in the morning, what time do you wake up? And they'll say 6:20 a.m. They probably didn't wake up at 6:20 that morning. Maybe they wish that they did. And then you say, what's the first thing you do? What's your morning routine like? And they start to paint this picture of pretty much what their ideal morning would have looked like this morning if they had been either like smart enough, disciplined enough, or had the free time and space. And although they're talking about this future reality, they're really talking about themselves and their desire today in a projected sense, which is easy to do because it's so far away that, it's possible. It's more probable. But then once they imagine it, they feel the excitement and the elation of that experience. And then all of a sudden, they're actually living it out. Like in a non-tangible way, they're already there. Emotionally, they're there. And I like to use the analogy of, when you're really hungry and maybe you're hanging out for a meal for 5 hours, and then you get a snack, like just a little taste of something, you're gone. Like there's no chance that you can hold back from eating now. Like you're just famished. You could have ignored it for a while, but as soon as you've had a taste, it's like I'm responsible to eat right now. Like, man, I need it. You know what I mean? That taste of something. And that's what the emotional side of this vision activity does. You get a taste of what you really, truly want. And then like fear, anxiety, limitations, beliefs, that they're still there. They're still obstacles, but you've got this almost unstoppable force now that you've evoked, that we all have access to, which is the force that we help to tap, to overcome those obstacles, to push through, to push around, to come up with strategies to get to the other side. And not only does that then become like, I guess, the fuel to get us there, to your point that you guys made before, it actually makes the process the success in itself. Because if you're feeling that experience of the future now, you actually have your reward in the present. You're not reliant on getting there to get that reward because you got a taste of it. It's a really interesting idea.
Yeah, I know that when Nathan and I walked through a process of doing like kind of similar to what you were talking about, like a grand vision builder, like where are we going to live? What's our lifestyle going to be like? How do you spend your free time? How do I spend my free time? How often are we having sex? Like, what does our relationship look like? Part of the joy of that process was not just shooting for like, okay, well, that's where we're going, but it was also creating the alignment between the two of us that we were on the same page.
Yeah, well, when you create that alignment between yourselves right now on the same page where you want to go, you'll actually start to be living it out right now, even in tangible forms quite often. Countless clients. One example is it was a couple, husband and wife. When he did the life plan, it was just really clear for him that he needs to be able to enjoy the present moment more. He was thinking, oh, well, in 10 years, where do I want to be? What do I want my life to feel like? What do I want to really be? What do I want to be doing and feeling, and how do I want to be in the future? And it's like, well, I don't want to be stressed about it. I want to be able to just enjoy myself and what I'm doing. And then I said, well, why not just do that right now? What's stopping you? What's holding you back? So what we're finding with anyone who's listening to this would encourage you to do it for yourself, or reach out to a coach who can facilitate it for you, or whatever it is, or a really close friend who can hopefully guide you through it. But find a way to identify what really pulls you towards the future, and then just ask yourself the question at the end of it: what of that am I able to do right now? It's the seeds that you plant today will determine the fruits you bear in the future. Something along those lines. Ignore the tangible there. But
we know the analogy.
Yeah, thanks.
We know where you're shooting
you get
for.
the analogy. Thank you. One of these days I'll get that right. No, but it's really important because you don't have to plant a seed right now and then just wait 5, 10, 15, 20 years in order for it to bear some fruits. You can start reaping the benefits today if you do it the right way.
Yeah, so Keith Abraham shared one of the activities which he takes his clients through, which is to identify 100 lifetime goals. And what he identified was that whether people actually reviewed them or did the activity once and never looked at them again, they achieved like 30 to 40 goals within the next 3 years, even if they hadn't reviewed what they had listed. So
even just the process.
So just planting the seed is the beginning, but it germinates even if you're not really aware of it.
Yeah, I mean, there is a Zig Ziglar quote to make up for my poor analogy just before. But Zig Ziglar said something which I really like, which is that the arrow that can't see its target is sure to miss every time. A lot of people will be like, why would I even strive for something? I'm not going to get there. It's impossible to get there. Well, it's definitely impossible to get there if you don't even strive for it.
Yeah.
But at least aim for something and move towards it. Move towards something that you're passionate about. And before you get there, it might be something you're striving for in 10 years' time. And in 1 year's time, you might decide, hey, that's not for me. I don't need that. I don't want that. That doesn't align with my values right now. And go another direction. But at least you're moving forward.
Yeah, totally. Hey, so we attended one of your Purpose Advisory events, which we both really loved. And one of the things that you talked about were the human drivers and how they sort of influence, I guess, how we show up in life and what we want, but then obviously in our relationships. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So the drivers you mentioned are Tony Robbins' concept. Hopefully a lot of people are familiar with it because it's one of the most underrated ideas I've ever come across. And to Harry's credit, like he pointed out to me as something that was life-changing. And I was like, yeah, I heard that, but nothing special about it, is it? And then like within 12 months, I think we'd used that model as the basis for almost every single thing we created.
Pretty much.
We'll give you the tidbits, right? Like what are the 6? So just to understand what they are, there's 4 what we call needs of personality and then 2 needs of spiritual growth. So if you just leave the spiritual growth ones aside and just look at the 4 needs of personality, you've got these 2 pairs of needs. You've got certainty or security, and then variety or novelty. So they seem to be sort of opposites to each other. Certainty is all about being sure and knowing what things are, and I'm feeling really confident and kind of like fear of the unknown. Whereas variety is pretty much the opposite. It's like getting bored with everything being the same all the time, wanting that novelty, wanting to seek adventure and all that sort of thing. And at the end of the day, every human needs both. From a personality point of view, you will prefer one of those 2 over the other, but at any one stage, you'll need both. The second pairing then is to do with connection and significance. So connecting, wanting to be part of the tribe, being similar to others, bringing sameness, harmony. Significance, wanting to be identified as separate from the tribe and being special and having some sort of esteem. And both are super vital. And all these needs can be really healthy. There are healthy versions of significance, there are healthy versions of connection. And then there's also really unhealthy ways that you can, desire the wrong type of connection. Way too close, way too smothering, or way too much significance, or way too much about me. So those 4 personality needs come in 2 pairs, and you're going to have a preference of one or the other. And the final 2 needs, being growth and contribution, are kind of different in some ways. They are in some ways opposite. So growth is about you becoming a bigger person, having more capacity, and then contributing is about empowering the rest of the world or pouring that into the rest of the world. But what's cute about those last 2, especially more than the other 4, is that there's kind of no limit to how much of that you really want to have. You want to optimize the amount of growth, optimize the amount of contribution, and that is kind of the spiritually fulfilled life in many regards. The 4 personality needs we all have to deal with. We're going to have our leanings, we're going to have our preference, and we've got to deal with those preferences. When you're overweight, for me, I'm a bit overweight on variety. My life is chaotic. My poor wife, my poor business partner has to deal with like new things all the time, and poor calendar management. I'm not justifying it, but that is my leaning, right? Harry is much more like naturally preferring certainty and having those things sort of more locked in from a personality standpoint. So I need to learn to balance that. If I'm going to be overloading one of my needs, there's probably going to be a deficit in my life. And so the needs do a lot of things. Firstly, they help us to understand what drives all of our behaviors, because the theory is that no matter what activity I do, what I'm up to at any point in the day, I could pause, step back and go, okay, which of my needs am I actually trying to meet here? What's the why? What's the kind of the fuel that's really burning this fire? And all of a sudden, mysterious behaviors we have that we never understood become very comprehensible. It's like, oh, yeah, I was wanting to meet my need for certainty, and I was probably trying to meet my need for significance as well. That's why I was a bit of a jerk.
Yeah, a personal example on that one. When I first learnt about this model, I was primarily driven by certainty and significance. Even though my personality isn't completely driven towards significance, that's just where my tendencies kind of lay. I wanted to be really important, and I wanted to be in control of the situation. And I discovered this while I was a financial advisor. I was in Westpac Premium, and I was up in the Ivory Tower, and I wasn't connecting with clients in the right way. And it's because my need to be in control of the conversation was just always trumping everything else. And my need to be important and significant was also trumping my ability to be able to actually listen to the client, to be able to ask them questions and let them feel that they're actually important as well. Because hey, if they're important, then I can't be important anymore, right? But it meant that I wouldn't let them speak up because I didn't want them to be more important than me, and I didn't want them to be able to take the conversation to any area which I wouldn't be completely certain of. And so that driver for certainty and the driver for significance were just limiting my potential with client interactions. And then I was realizing that this was happening everywhere else as well, which is why awareness is super key. It's super important, and it's absolutely key to be able to have personal growth. Because one thing to be able to know the model, it's another to really take the time and focus on where's this really been impacting me and what do I want to shift. So for me, it was, hey, my level of certainty here is at a 9 or a 10. What would it actually look like if my level of certainty was only at about a 3 or a 4 out of 10? What would it look like then? And my behavior would be completely different and almost always better, because you can take it a step further and you can say, well, what if my need for growth was a whole lot higher? Then what would that look like? And so you can start shifting it around. The way that Tony really talks about this model is he references how Once you meet your needs at a really high level, and any particular behavior you have meets at least two of your needs, let's say more than an 8 out of 10, then you'll become addicted to the behavior. And you could see someone who's eating way too much, for example, and they're overweight. As a result of, they feel certain because they're able to eat it, and they want variety of all the different types of foods that they can eat. They feel really significant when they get to eat all of this different food, and maybe even they have connection with people as well, because they have connection with themselves, but also connection with others when they go out and eat all the food. Ultimately, it's not empowering for them because they're overweight. And you can have it the complete other way around as well, and you can focus on having really empowering behaviors which are meeting your needs at a really high level, but they're supporting you living life the way that you really love living it. So that's probably what Tristan meant by how we're bringing it into pretty much everything that we do over the last 12 months. It's how can we be meeting our needs at a high level in really empowering ways, as opposed to just, let things happen as they happen.
So I guess then tying this back to life planning, if you do have a really high need for certainty, in your life projection, you might be looking at, all right, I need to buy a house. I need to have this much money in the bank. I need to have
roots down.
Yeah, roots down. And so I think by even knowing your own drivers, it really probably helps you unpack what you're actually looking for in life and where you want to go. But it might help you to change tack and go, okay.
Yeah, to challenge it at least. Like, you don't want to change something if it's working well, but we rarely know if our life's working well or which parts are working well. The desire for planning routes is such a biological thing that you can't say it's wrong. Same with like wanting to be a mom, wanting to be a dad, wanting to like have your own patch. You could say it's cliche or not, but like it's in our genes. Like, we actually have chemicals firing at certain parts of our life which bring it on. So it's not wrong, but as Harry's analogy about the person overeating, it's like, well, is it leading to good things in all areas of your life, and where is it in excess? And I think once you can identify the cause of the driver, then you can say, is it good for me? Is it the best for me? Hard question though, right? Like, I'm sure you guys find it, if you had to do these sort of things by yourself in a vacuum, they're hard questions to have. And to bring that relational element back in, like, being with a partner is such an incredible thing. But for sure, it like brings this amazing dimension of like, you actually have someone to soundboard off, right? And we haven't touched on it too much in today's chat. I think, Sammy, you did ask about planning together. How do you overcome those challenges? I think being able to treat your plans as your own personal plans and your own personal desires is a good starting point. And that's where your spouse can be such an asset, because they see things you don't see, and they can have a different perspective to what you're sharing, especially if you're able to listen to each other, which again is difficult, but definitely worth working on. But then when you're working on the plans as a team, there's kind of like this, for example, my desire for variety. My wife also has a desire for variety. So I'd say mine is probably a bit more than hers generally, but for hers it expresses a lot through travel. She loves to travel, and for me it's much more kind of intellectual. I just love new concepts and new ideas, which she doesn't connect as much with. So even though we have similar desires, we pursue them in different ways, and she can still feel like that she lacks the same adventure that she wants, and I can feel I lack the exploration of new ideas. So we're not fully content in that, right? In base state. But more importantly, our life has almost no stability. We house sat for about 3 years, every 2 weeks, moving from place to place. We then moved out of that arrangement into a community home for 4 years, where we had more than 20 people moving through our doors, all of which we loved. Like, we loved the chaos, but now we have a little one, and we have to set some like boundaries and stability and all that sort of thing. So these sort of leanings that we have come back to bite us. And what I think is interesting is when you look at a couple who have quite similar desires or drivers, then what you get is a really strong vacuum or a deficit on the flip side. So we lack clear stability, certainty, and boundaries. And I feel that really personally as a dad, because I know how well my mom did at setting great boundaries for me. And I'm mindful to want to be able to offer that to my daughter, Noelle, but I'm naturally not good at it. And to be honest, my wife isn't either. Like, we're struggling and we're learning, And so what I think, I've shared a lot of different thoughts there, but I think what I'm trying to get at is that when we have this sort of challenge of making the two of us work together with our very different drivers and desires, the idea of having a third party, someone sort of not necessarily above us, but kind of across the whole situation, that we definitely look up to, and who's got the experience and the knowledge to be able to help navigate the complexities and help point out what's really going on, and even to help facilitate the disagreements or the tension points. It's pivotal. It's not assumed, I don't think. There's not many people that we speak to socially, Harry and I, who assume that you should have a life mentor or a life coach or a life planner. But then when we share what we do, they're like, oh, I need that. Like, that's almost every time what we hear. And it doesn't mean they act on it. Most of them won't act on it for a few years. There will come time. But it's such a no-brainer when you think it through. However, culturally, it's not really au fait. It's not happening, not many people offering the service, and there's very few people taking the service.
Well, I commend you both for, I guess, creating a space where you're having these conversations and you're encouraging other people to have conversations about, setting themselves up for success and their definition of success, not, their next door neighbors or not what their parents thought they should do,
right.
Actually what success looks like for them. So I think it's awesome what you are doing. The time has gone so fast, and we dug into a couple of really cool things. And I appreciate the vulnerability on sharing some personal stories and examples, because I think it helps solidify the learning when you're like, okay, I get it in that example. But I would love to know, what is it that the two of you do in your respective relationships that help you stay in that state of dating or stay in a really fueled up and intentional relationship?
Yeah, I mean, it gets tough. Well, Tristan shared about how he and his wife are both kind of chaotic and on that side. My wife and I are both on the more organized side. So talking about parenting in that regard, we're like, hey, we're not letting her, we literally had to say, hang on, we've got to actually be intentional about making sure that we get out of the house and bring our daughter out to see the world and everything, because we've just got too much order in our household. We've got too much organization going on. And so I think that it's definitely with both myself and my wife, but then also with all clients that I see as well. It's a really tough topic to try and work out. There's all of this other stuff that's going on in our lives. How do we continue to make sure that we're focusing on our relationship? And I'd like to think that the key to making sure that you're both being able to want to be together and continue to grow together is to continue to grow yourselves. Take care of yourself. It's the small things which count, but taking care of yourself and then also making sure that you continue to grow personally means that the relationship itself will continue to grow. My wife and I often joke about how we're on our third marriage together, because we've just been so focused on growing and going into seminars, and we both have our own life coaches and our own focus on being able to grow and reading our own books and learning new things all the time. That who we are right now is completely different to who we were 5 and a bit years ago when we got married, and a huge difference compared to when we started dating while we were in uni. So I think a big part of it is to just accept that things will continue to change and to actually strive for those changes as well.
We instituted this thing called happy hour around about 3 years ago, prompted by a life coach that we had. Game changer, so good. So it's initially just a 1 hour conversation with a bit of structure to it. But we've turned it into probably half of a day now. Most of Sunday is happy hour, whilst we're in the car chatting. I'll really quickly run through it because I think it's actually a useful tool. I'm happy to send a link to you guys of what we actually.
Yeah, awesome. We'll bang it in the show notes.
Yeah. So 5 key topics we talk about. First is we do the appreciation game. Really fun. Either you tell them what you appreciated them, typically 3 things, or you can flip it and go, hey, what do you want to be appreciated for? Which is actually a difficult question to answer some of the time. It's a really fun way to do it. So appreciation game, that sort of leverages the conversation up a bit. And then you talk about some of the practicals. So you look at each other's calendars, just be mindful of what the week is. That's tough for us because I'm the digital guy and Renee's got her physical A3 calendar, which has to lug around. Then you talk food. So how we enjoyed food, what are we looking forward to this week? What sort of shopping should we do? Just the logistical side of things, Then money. And we always prescribe this to our clients is make sure you have a once a week check-in about money. It's really easy to do as well. You just get your banking app, you hold it up, and the conversation will ensue. but just look at it together, because there's always going to be topics, things that typically aren't addressed, or emotions, anxieties. As soon as you pull out that app and you've got the 2 minutes to talk about it, things will flow. And if you can create a regularity of every week having this conversation, it brings a real sense of confidence that you guys are on top of your money and you're not going to let them, fall by the wayside. And then I'm sure you guys will love the last topic is expectations. How are we doing? Having fun? What are you keen to try? What are you finding difficult? How are you feeling about your body? All that sort of stuff, right? You can add in more topics, but they're probably the main ones, I think. And then there's some really simple questions that we always frame to each other within this time. And I won't go through all of them, but some of the key ones are, how connected to me do you feel from 0 to 10 right now? I always ask that after we've done the appreciation game, not beforehand, because you never know how things are going. And then some of the other key ones would be, maybe the most powerful is, what can I apologize for? What would you like me to apologize for from the last week? And since we instituted that one, it really changed the game, because I think either of us had at times harbored this sense of even resentment or of a concern, at least, that I don't know if I'll ever get recognized for what just happened there. So I'm going to have to point it out or tell them or get back at them in whatever way we do it, But once you have a discipline of every week, there is this time to invite the other person to let you know how you've hurt them and genuinely actually apologize for it. Then you build a trust. And we've got this now. Like, we know that if she brings something up, I'll apologize. Like, there's no question about it, because we've done it so many times, and vice versa. And it brings a lot less angst and tension to when the little things that niggle at us throughout the week when they come up, to the extent that now we don't even bring them up midweek all the time, which is the goal, actually, that we can create a space for bringing that stuff up, even if relevant. So yeah, there's a few questions that we pose to help make sure that some of those things of the heart don't go unchecked. So for us, it was important not just to have novelty time or spontaneous time, because we're not too bad at that sort of thing, but we needed to bring some structure to our time together, because it was so counter our personalities.
That was awesome. So happy hour turned half Sunday.
Yeah, totally. Almost the whole day.
Really cool. Thank you so much for sharing, guys. That was really cool conversation. What I would love to do is get a better idea if people are loving what they're hearing from you and they're interested about Purpose Advisory. What's the best way for them to connect?
Yeah, cool. The easiest way is to just book in an intro call with us, with either myself or Tristan. It's just a 20-minute video conference. Let's have a chat, get to know us. What are you really striving for? Why are you reaching out? That's the important part. So I'd encourage everyone who's even thinking of maybe finding some value from us to reach out. Myself and Tristan, we're always happy to have a chat.
Yeah, we definitely are. And if I can just generalize that a little bit more, maybe before you asked that, Sammy, someone wasn't even thinking about, these guys are probably what I need. I believe that mentoring is the most important thing that our generation lacks. And I'll say that blanket across the board. I can't think of a single thing that we're missing more. In some people's cases, that's legitimate parenting, like a father role or a mother role that they just didn't get. And that's hard if they didn't get that. Some didn't get either, let alone one. I was very blessed to have both to a fairly good degree. But even that wasn't enough. My life only really started going next level when I fell into mentoring and was chased by mentors and found out how powerful it could be. And so if you listening to this realize that, you know what, especially when it comes to our life plans, big picture, and even when it comes to our relationship, we don't really have someone in that position for us. If you don't have that role in your life, I'd strongly get you to consider it. What are you missing out by not having that? And then if you're wanting it and you're interested, then what we're offering really is reach out, have a first chat with us. We'll talk about a lot of stuff and we'll give you a taste of what it can look like to have that role in your life. Yeah, mentoring, man, is completely underrated.
You don't need to have something wrong in your life in order to benefit from finding a mentor. It's just if you want to get better.
Thank you so much for joining us. Our core values at Fuel Collective are to love life, to date forever, and to be the change. And so being the change is really being the change that we want to see in the world, and by giving back to some of those causes that we're really connected with. So to thank you for being on the podcast today, we're providing early childhood education to a class of children for a month. So this will allow a safe learning environment and age-appropriate classrooms, which are purpose-built and furnished to ensure a conducive learning environment. So thanks so much for making
Where's that going to be?
So the project is via partnership with Buy One, Give One.
Great. Yeah, I'm familiar with them.
Yeah, and that particular project is in Kenya. So thank you so much for making that possible, because we know that early stage learning really does, like you said, setting up the solid foundation can change a whole life. So thank you so much for making that possible.
Thank
you guys
you
for making this
we
possible.
just heard about.
Cool. So thank you so much for joining us, guys. This has been awesome. Really look forward to seeing where Purpose Advisory goes and your journey, because I know you're up to some really cool things.
Yeah, glad to be on. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, thanks for having us, guys.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.